Welcome. I'm Ann Waterbury, the project director for Arlington's Guarantee at the Arlington Community Foundation. We are so excited to share the findings of our recently released evaluation report today. You'll hear from several of our participants and a panel of colleagues from the Foundation, the Arlington Department of Human Services, and Kresge Foundation. We've tried to address questions that were submitted in advance in today's presentation. But if you find you have further questions, please send them to my colleague, Nick Knopf, and we'll get back to you in the coming days. You'll see Nick's email address in the chat. First, some background on how we got here. Arlington envisions itself as world-class and inclusive. While we've won many superlatives in the world-class category, we've got a ways to go toward economic inclusivity. Overall, Arlington is a very wealthy community. Our area median income for a household of four, $152,000. But we know that averages mask disparities. 10% of our population are living in poverty or below 30% of our AMI. That's $45,600 for a household of four. We're talking about our healthcare aides, school bus drivers and assistant teachers, food service and childcare providers. You'll hear from some of them today. They contribute to Arlington's economic success and our richly diverse community fabric, but they do not share in Arlington's prosperity. A key factor behind these disparities are extreme affordability pressures. Arlington has among the highest childcare and housing costs in the nation. Coupled with that is a huge gap between the living wage and the actual wages. A living wage is what it takes to cover basic household expenses without outside assistance and without sharing housing. So have a look at this slide. Across the bottom, you will see the actual real-time wages from this past August for key essential jobs in Arlington. And the graph shows 3 data points. For a household with a single adult, for one with 2 working adults and 2 children, and then finally at the top, 1 working adult, 1 adult home with the children, and 2 children. It's no wonder that these positions are so hard to fill here. Why would a childcare provider making well below the living wage commute over an hour each way to Arlington every day when they can easily get the same job farther out where it's more affordable? Our valued partner in this work is the Arlington County Department of Human Services. DHS is the anchor of our local safety net system. Over the years, DHS, the foundation, and our local nonprofits have partnered to make significant improvements to the local safety net services. And while these services are critical in stabilizing households, we all agree that we can't service our way out of the cycle of poverty in households that have been under-resourced for generations. The Arlington Community Foundation and DHS recognize the need to look to upstream infrastructure investments and policy change. For example, the federal current benefits policies are very restrictive in what they cover, and they're punitive to people who are trying to earn their way out of poverty. Even a slight increase in income can result in the premature loss of critically needed benefits, such as Medicaid, food stamps, childcare, or housing grants. And it takes years of increased earning power before someone can climb up to self-sufficiency after falling off the benefits cliff. We joined the guaranteed income movement because we know the market alone cannot address economic challenges that these households face, and that low-income households need breathing room that the regular monthly cash with no strings attached provide. Our pilot is designed to increase their spending power and to change the stereotypical narratives about people struggling to make ends meet. The principles of guaranteed income are aligned with the 3 criteria for moving out of poverty. First, increased income and assets. Second, having a sense of control over one's life and future plans is essential. And third, a sense of connection and belonging to the community. You will hear these themes throughout today's program. Now let's hear from one of our participants.
Hola, buenas. I'm a single mom with an 8-year-old son. I have lived in Arlington for 8 years. I work in construction, which doesn't pay a lot. I'm currently working overnight on a building in Roslyn from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. There are very few construction jobs during the winter, so I have to take the jobs that are available to me. The $500 a month helped me in many ways. It allowed me to enroll my son in various camps and classes, including swimming classes for both myself and my son. It also allowed me to sign up for GED courses, which are helping me work towards my goals. I want to progress past construction. I want my son to be able to say, "My mom used to work in construction, but now she works in a bank." I also used some of the funds to take care of myself, to get a haircut, for example. I started getting calls from Eric asking how I was doing and telling me about different courses and opportunities in Arlington. These calls were small things, but really they were the big things that make me feel important. It helped get rid of a lot of my fears, and I now feel like I don't have to stay in. I can participate more in the community. This program has allowed me and my son to get out of our comfort zones. It's a beautiful thing.
We went into this pilot with our eyes wide open about the potential harm that extra income could cause in terms of lost benefits while people are still trying to move out of poverty. So being able to ensure that our participants' benefits were protected was a prerequisite prior to launching Arlington's Guarantee. And so we set up procedural guardrails with our state and local government. And we are so pleased to announce that we were indeed able to keep this commitment. No benefits were lost as a direct result of this extra monthly income from Arlington's Guarantee. This important outcome is a testament to the care that's been taken by our pilot staff and the county benefits eligibility specialist, so that our participants were not penalized. Now we'll hear from Brian Markey, the Arlington Community Foundation Director of Grants and Initiatives. Brian's going to cover our program design, partners, and staffing. He was essential to the smooth implementation of all the moving parts of Arlington's Guarantee.
Thank you, Anne. I'm pleased to share more about the design of our work. So Arlington's Guarantee was a privately funded pilot. And ACF raised a $2 million budget from private donors, businesses, faith communities, and other foundations. So no public dollars were used. 1.8 million of that budget went directly to participants, and the remaining 200,000 was a grant from the Kresge Foundation to cover the extra staff and the operating cost to run the pilot. Now, for example, perhaps the most important staff person in the pilot was our frontline program advocate that all participants interacted with. You actually just heard the participants say, I got a call from Eric. That's Eric Endo, our program advocate. And prior to that was Sorelli Mendoza-Curry. They were essential to doing this work. This person conducted onboarding calls, surveys, and referrals for participants as they progressed through the pilot. Now, not all participants started at the same time. Instead, we enrolled the 200 participants gradually over the course of 9 months. So it took a little over 2 years to complete the 18 months for all participants. And each participating family, as we've said, has received $500 a month for the 18 months. How it worked was that they received money on the 15th of each month transferred to a debit card through our partner called Usio. And the debit card included access to a secure app to allow participants to manage their money online, plus access to 24/7 card services and customer service provided by Usio. The 200 participating households were all Arlington residents with children living below 30% of the area median income, which we mentioned earlier is less than $45,000 per year for a family of 4. Rather than opening an application process and asking people to disclose a bunch of financial and personal information, we primarily identified participants through our partnership with Arlington County's DHS department. As a fully integrated department, one of the only a few in the country, Arlington DHS had access to administrative and benefits data that streamlined enrollment. And so this was particularly important for us because we knew we wanted to only include participants who would not be impacted by the pilot for their benefits or have their benefits reduced. So we were able to do that because of this partnership with DHS. We used an experimental design to create a group that would receive the $500, known as a participant group, and a group that was similar in all other respects, except that they would not receive the $500. So we refer to this as the comparison group. And as part of our design to protect public benefits, we identified which benefits we could protect and which ones we couldn't based on federal, state, and local guidance. So for example, one benefit we were not able to get clearance to protect were housing choice vouchers, also known as Section 8 vouchers. But we were fortunate to be able to draw our sample from the Arlington County Housing Grant Pool, which is distinct from Section 8. Unlike Section 8, Arlington County housing grants are funded entirely by the county. They help cover a portion of the rent and are available to working low-income families with eligible immigration status in Arlington, amongst a few other populations that housing grants serve. Since these housing grants are locally controlled, the extra $500 in monthly cash did not reduce anyone's housing grant. And including participants with housing grants also meant that most of our participants had some level of housing stability. So that increased the likelihood that they could use the monthly $500 for goals other than housing, as we'll learn about today. However, we also wanted to have our sample be representative of a wider cross-section of Arlington residents. So we reserved 50 of the 200 slots for 2 additional populations: undocumented residents and formerly incarcerated residents. We identified a larger pool of these residents with the help of several nonprofits and randomized them into participant and comparison groups as well. Now, once these benefits checks were complete and all that lead work was done, we were confident we could protect benefits. Our evaluation team at DHS conducted the randomization, and we contacted participants who were selected with a mailed letter and a phone call. We were concerned that people might think it's too good to be true when they read that letter, when they got that phone call, and maybe it was a scam. Unfortunately, there's a lot of those out there in the world. But thankfully, we didn't have that issue, in part because we partnered with the county for our staff to call using a county phone number. And when it came time to actually pick up the card and start working with the program advocate, we held that at the county DHS office. So that gave people confidence that it was legitimate. Now, some of the most heartwarming moments for us involved in this pilot came when participants first picked up that card at the DHS office and told us how life-changing this already felt, that they were waiting for something to happen in their lives that could be transformational. Now, this in-person meeting also allowed our program advocate to conduct the baseline survey, let folks know that optional surveys would take place every 6 months, and just answer any questions that they had. The comparison group members not receiving the cash also received the same surveys on the same timeline. And we want to give a special thanks to our partners who conducted those comparison surveys with those folks. So that's Arlington Thrive, OAR, and Arlington Free Clinic. Now, one final note, we cared about having the program advocate engage in person because part of their role was to provide referrals and warm handoffs throughout the pilot whenever participants identified a need that could be addressed by Arlington's safety net supports. So by pilot's end, our program advocate provided more than 600 referrals in areas such as employment, finances, and much more. Additionally, participants were offered the opportunity to talk to a coach to work on their goals, which we offered in partnership with county and nonprofit staff. And about 1 in 3 participants worked with a coach by pilot's end. So now let's hear from another participant about their experience in Arlington's Guarantee.
It's pajama day at my school. I work at Montessori Public School of Arlington on Highland Street. I'm born and raised in Arlington. I work for Arlington Public Schools 11 years now. My mom also works for Arlington Public Schools for 32 years. I have a son who's 4 who goes to the school I teach at. In October of 2021, I had a break-in where someone broke into my house while my son was there. So I had to make a decision a month later to break my lease or move out. So I decided to move out for my safety. So in January of 2022, when I got the call about the Guarantee program, I was like, this couldn't have come at a better time. I had to break my lease to pay extra money for that and to pay $300 more in rent. So I was just super grateful that that came in handy to help with rent, a little bit for me to go back to school, household needs, and to take care of my son's everyday needs. So I was super grateful for the program and glad I was chosen.
Arlington's Guarantee is public-private partnership at its best. With the Community Foundation funding, staffing, and implementing the pilot, and the County Department of Human Services providing the sampling, administrative data, benefits protection, and evaluation. So I'm so pleased to introduce Anita Freeman, the County Director of Human Services, and Michael Dharma Irwin, who led the pilot evaluation team, and she's the Quality and Administration Division Director at DHL. Anita?
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for allowing me to be on this call, this webinar. I hope you all will learn a lot about our guaranteed income pilot today. I just wanted to say our Department of Human Services is the largest department in Arlington, Virginia. We serve over 40,000 people. Hard to believe in a community as wealthy as Arlington, but we are the public arm of the local safety net. We administer state and local benefits. We're the Child Welfare Agency. We're the local Department of Health. We're the local Mental Health Agency, the Employment Center. And so one of the benefits of having the participants connected to our department is that they can also partake in all of the other kinds of programs that we offer for low-income Arlingtonians. And we've been fortunate to partner with the Arlington Community Foundation in many innovative ways, not just improving economic mobility, but also removing systemic barriers. And that's fundamental to the core of our values as an organization. We have worked together with the foundation and with local nonprofits to reduce the amount of time that families spend interacting with safety net providers. We've developed cross-agency integrated case management approaches. But Arlington's Guarantee really is the pinnacle of this work and really gets at the core of who we work with. In this graph, you can see this is the totality of the pools of participants that we worked with. The one group being the 200 participants who were receiving the $500 of cash every month, and then the comparison group of 100. And the demographics basically indicate that most individuals in the groups identified as people of color. More than half identified as Black, including both African American and people who had immigrated from Africa. 30% identified as Latino. And these demographics really reflect the demographics of people in Arlington who experience housing instability. We also had a tremendous amount of linguistic diversity in our groups. According to the US Census, there's over 100 different languages spoken in the United States. And in Arlington's Guarantee, we had about 13 different languages represented. The most common languages other than English were Spanish, Amharic, and Arabic. And we also had quite a few speakers of Bengali, Tigrinya, Mongolian, and Urdu. So this was a very diverse population and really represents the families that come to Department of Human Services on a regular basis for support. Let me turn it over to Michael Dharma-Irwin.
Thank you, Anita.
Michael Dharma-Irwin is our Quality and Administration Division Director. She oversees compliance, quality assurance, and many of the organizational development aspects of our department.
Thank you very much. So a fundamental tenet of guaranteed income is freedom of choice. Individuals know best how to use their money to meet their needs and the needs of their families. To understand which needs participants chose to address, at each survey we asked what they were able to do with the extra income. The chart at the right shows how they responded. The total does add up to more than 100%, as many people identified more than one theme. The most common theme they shared was being able to buy more food or better quality food to feed their families, including food items not available through food banks or other benefit programs. Many participants also identified bills and debts that they were able to pay. They were able to cover expenses without increasing their debt. This was particularly important at a time when the price of basic necessities was increasing due to inflation. The next most common use was meeting family and household needs, such as buying new shoes for growing children, buying a warm coat for the winter, or buying a crib and clothes for a new baby. Additionally, families were able to keep up with rising rent costs to maintain their homes in Arlington. The last two categories are particularly interesting. Many participants described being able to enjoy activities with their families beyond meeting basic needs. They described activities such as purchasing county fair tickets, buying art supplies to paint with their children, or visiting family members who they hadn't seen in years. Some mentioned that with the extra income, they were able to afford holiday gifts for their children. In addition to these major categories, participants described dozens of other ways they use the extra income to improve their lives. Some were able to afford childcare for their children so they could obtain jobs. Others were able to pursue education, including GED classes, phlebotomy classes, and commercial driving licensure. Some paid for necessary medical care that they delayed due to cost. And a few individuals were even able to create an emergency fund so they could be better prepared for the next time an unexpected expense hit their family. Overall, people were able to use the income to address the needs they saw as most important, giving each household greater financial stability and improving their quality of life. On the next slide, you'll see employment results. And I'll start by explaining the chart format. As Brian mentioned, the Community Foundation chose not to do a formal randomized controlled trial to allow more flexibility in how they work with participants. But it was important to include in the evaluation a randomly selected comparison group chosen from the same pool as families. That design allowed us to compare outcomes for people who received the extra income and support to outcomes for similar households who did not. In each of the charts on this slide, there are 4 bars. On the left, there are 2 bars for participants, and on the right, 2 bars for the comparison group. Within each of those groups, the gray bar shows what people reported on their initial survey before they received any cash, and the blue bar shows what they reported on their final survey at the end of the program. So on the top chart, you'll see that at baseline, 75% of participants and 74% of comparison families reported that they were employed, pretty similar percentages. By the final survey, in the blue bar, the percent of participants employed increased significantly to 87%, while the percent of comparison households employed did not change. Now at baseline, some participants reported working 6 or 7 days a week and up to 16 hours a day using gig work such as rideshare driving or delivery driving to cover living expenses. In the final survey, 85% of participants reported that the program let them use their time differently. Rather than working overtime or multiple jobs to make ends meet, some participants reported using the time to pursue credentials, such as certified nursing assistant or child development associate credentials that could lead to a higher paying job, or even starting their own business. Other participants indicated that Arlington's Guarantee helped them pursue better paying jobs by letting them purchase interview clothes or cover the gap in pay between their old job and their new one. In addition to increased employment, participants reported an increase in both income from work and total income. Median monthly income from work increased 36% for participants, but only 9% for the comparison group. The increase for the participant group is due to 2 different factors. One is that some people who were initially unemployed obtained jobs, and also some people who got a better paying job over the course of the program. You'll see that the hourly wage earned by participants increased 10%, from $15 at baseline to $16.50 at final, while the hourly wage in the comparison group did not increase. It is important to note, though, that even with these increased wages, the median family was still earning less than a living wage. An income of $16.40 a month is under $20,000 per year.
The increases in employment and income also translated into improvements in some measures that are related to financial stability. So as you can see, following the same format that Michael Dharma had presented, we have baseline in gray, final evaluations in blue, participants on the left, and the comparison group on the right. What are these related measures? Well, the first is the ability for someone to have a bank account. And bank account is critical for people to start saving and to track their finances. And the percent of individuals in the core group went from 77% in the beginning to 86% at the end of the pilot in terms of having a checking or savings account, while the comparison group did not fare as well, from 71% to 76%. Another related issue, as you all know, is acquiring finances and money from sources that are not stable, things like loans or borrowed money or having to sell one's possessions. So in the prior graph, we could see that the percentage of participants who reported using these strategies at baseline were 47%, and they decreased down to 30% at the final, while with the comparison group, we started at 26% and they increased. So there was actually a reverse consequence in the comparison group. We can see that in final surveys, 94% of participants who set an explicit goal of paying down debt were able to make that progress, while 67% of those whose goal was to increase their savings were also able to make that progress. Next slide. Of course, despite these gains in employment, income, and some financial stability, there were a number of financial pressures during this period of time. And unfortunately, the period of time included the COVID pandemic. So, and a very high rate of inflation. So some of the financial pressures proved difficult to overcome. The pilot actually started in September 2021. We were in the peak of COVID, ended in November 2023. During that period, the US Consumer Price Index had increased almost 12%. And inflation in housing, well, that was even more. There was also the eviction pandemic, I would call it, where although we had a moratorium in place for a period of time, that ended. And we had in Arlington guarantees when the eviction moratorium ended and the federal and state funding for eviction prevention ended, then we had even more pressure on households at the risk of losing their house. And of course, childcare. Well, Arlington is one of the most expensive places in the entire United States in terms of the cost of childcare. I think about $40,000 a year for a toddler and an infant. And the average, so those were very high. And also the rent prices were clearly unaffordable for a family earning $1,640 per month. We had in Arlington 2-bedroom apartments going for about $2,700. So the consequence of these pressures are that, and were that many participant households did continue to experience financial instability. Although many were able to pay down debt, in aggregate, the household's debt still increased. That is something we have to consider, that, you know, even with the extra income, the pressures that are ongoing with low-income families are hard to overcome. Michael Donna?
Thank you. So as Anne mentioned, the Community Foundation was committed to not jeopardizing people's benefits, such as SNAP, Medicaid, or housing grants, with its extra income. Between 2021 and 2023, events occurred that affected benefits retention for everyone in the community. During the COVID pandemic, benefits programs adjusted some requirements to help families meet basic needs during a time of widespread unemployment. These requirements were reinstated in 2022 and 2023. Some households in both participant and comparison groups lost benefits over the course of 18 months due to a variety of reasons, including not working enough hours, moving out of the county, having excess income from work, or losing eligibility for family benefits when the youngest child turned 18. However, Arlington's Guarantee participants retained their benefits at a significantly higher rate than the comparison group. The Community Foundation's program advocate and coaches frequently work with participants to help troubleshoot challenges with their benefits applications and help them resolve questions. And as Anne noted, we are pleased to report that no participant lost their benefits due to the additional income they received from Arlington's Guarantee. On the next slide, you'll see that the impacts of Arlington's Guarantee extend far beyond material outcomes, however. Just as important as income and assets are people's physical, mental well-being, and sense of control over their lives, as well as their sense of belonging in the community. Research has shown a clear connection between financial security and health outcomes. Participants significantly improved their physical and mental well-being over the course of 18 months. People were asked on each survey how many days had poor physical health kept them from going to work or engaging in their usual activities. For participants receiving the extra income, the percentage reporting no days lost due to physical health concerns improved from 60% at baseline to 74% at final, while the percentage in the comparison group actually declined. When asked how many days stress, anxiety, or sadness had kept them from doing their usual activities, the percentage of participants reporting no days lost improved from just over half at baseline to 72% at final, while the percentage in the comparison group didn't change. In the final survey, 84% of participants reported that the program allowed them to feel more in control of their future. In their open-ended responses, many participants highlighted that Arlington's Guarantee had reduced the stress and anxiety they felt about meeting the cost of daily living, managing emergency expenses, and providing opportunities for their children. They reported less exhaustion and more hope for the future. On the next slide, participants also reported that their connections in their families and communities improved. In the final survey, 81% of participants agreed that the program had made them feel more included in their community. They reported being able to connect with others because they felt less exhausted and less stressed about meeting basic needs. Connections they formed included participating in organized neighborhood activities, meeting other parents to provide mutual support, helping their children participate in sports or other enrichment activities, and informally supporting neighbors. Many participants highlighted spending more time on family activities in particular. In the final survey, 91% agreed that the program had allowed them to take advantage of new opportunities for themselves and their family. And in their open-ended responses, most participants highlighted increased time with family as a key outcome of Arlington's Guarantee.
Although participants reported positive results in many domains, we did have subgroups of participants who were undocumented or returning from incarceration, and unfortunately, those results were less positive than for the overall results of the participants. Participants who were undocumented experienced lower rates of unemployment, lower hourly wages, and much lower total monthly income. This is tied to the fact that people without documentation are ineligible for many employment opportunities. Participants who are undocumented experience the highest level of difficulty in meeting basic needs. And they were much less likely than the overall group to have bank accounts or access to medical care, and very much more likely than participants overall to experience food insecurity and to worry about housing instability. Without documentation, as we know, people are unable to open bank accounts, ineligible for benefits, and very difficult, have a lot of difficulty accessing housing and medical care. Now, the other group we had were participants who were returning from incarceration. And thanks to the participation of OAR, we were able to obtain a lot of this data. People returning from incarceration reported hourly wages similar to those of participants who received the housing grants. However, they were much less likely to report being employed. This trend likely relates to the barriers that the legal system presents when people are obtaining employment after returning from incarceration. And because many returning residents did not have employment, the median total income for a group as a whole was the lowest of all the groups. They also reported high levels of difficulty in meeting most basic needs. Returning residents were also more likely than other participants to take out loans or use other unsustainable financial practices. And this trend is related to the higher levels of unemployment these individuals experienced, as well as the barriers that the legal system involvement presents to obtaining housing. Okay, well, this is self-explanatory. And it's really a testament to the overall achievement of the program. When asked at the end of the program whether the participants felt that they were better off compared to 18 months ago, you can see on the left side in the pie chart, 73% reported that they were much better off, and 26% reported that they were somewhat better off. While in the comparison group, we had 33% somewhat better off, 26% no difference, and some even reported worse off. So this is really the culmination of the study and this pilot. And I think that it's really a testament to the ambitious goal of the Arlington Community Foundation, together with the safety net providers who will work with them and the community itself, to be able to complete this pilot here in Arlington. I'd like to introduce one of the participants. I'm going to turn it over to Anne actually to do the detailed introduction.
Thank you so much, Anita and Michael Dharma, for sharing these inspiring findings. And we encourage all of you to read the full report if you haven't. And again, feel free to email us for further questions. So as Anita said, we're now going to hear from another participant. She exemplifies how powerful this extra slack in money, time, and attention can be. She's a single mom with a bachelor's degree who came to Arlington 9 years ago as an asylee from Egypt. She had been a very successful business entrepreneur in Egypt. After coming here, she did gigs, driving Uber, babysitting, and substitute teaching, until she did become a full-time math and science assistant teacher at Yorktown High School. She shared with us how the extra monthly income allowed her to start her own business while she continues still as an assistant teacher. And sadly, you're going to hear that she's now facing a possible need to move out of Arlington because she no longer qualifies for her housing grant and her Medicaid as her daughters are turning 18.
Actually, back there in Egypt, I used to have my own business. So I used to be my own boss. And I was thinking, okay, I miss I miss my business. I'm missing my like passion. But I wouldn't dare to start anything with my just limited income, with my just job. The chance the program gave to me that I spent this summer, instead of like working in the summer school, I spent that summer attending webinars and workshops with the SBA and all the community and the government education for small businesses. So I figured out that I could start like a small thing, and I did. I may need to move from Arlington if like my financial situation wouldn't be more stable. Like this month, my daughter, once she will turn 18, my housing grant will be removed, my Medicaid will be removed, and like a lot of stuff will be removed. I never choose to leave Arlington. That actually it wouldn't be my choice at all, but I never know if I will have to take this hard decision or not, but yeah.
Next, I'm turning it over to Gina Lewis, who's the Senior Fellow in Human Services at the Kresge Foundation, for some remarks. Before I turn it over, I want to say that we at the Arlington Community Foundation are extremely grateful, again, for the operating grant from Kresge that allowed us to run and staff this pilot. Gina?
Well, thank you, Anne, and also thank you to the Arlington Community Foundation for the work that you have done and are continuing to do. As Anne said, I'm Gina Lewis, and I work with the Kresge Foundation as a Senior Fellow on the Human Services Program. I have been fortunate to be a part of Kresge, and at Kresge, we work to expand equity and opportunity in cities across America. We began supporting the basic income pilot efforts around 2017 or so. And frankly, it's amazing how far this movement has come over the past few years. I think we have to take a pause and recognize that COVID had a lot to do with the amazing speed at which people are thinking about and understanding the way cash can benefit families. Although, again, it's not a new concept. The Human Services Program at Kresge, along with our American Cities program and the Detroit program, began looking at the basic income efforts that were beginning around that time and thinking about how these efforts could potentially show and prove, again, what is not exactly rocket science. People with low income need money. We are proud to say that we partner with many of the captains of the Guaranteed Income Ship, if you will. Mayors for Guaranteed Income, Dr. Aisha Nyandero, Economic Security Project, and we are also fortunate to be part of the Guaranteed Income Community of Practice. We have helped support different pilots, again, across the United States, including Arlington's Guarantee, Mother's Magnolia's Trust, LA County Breathe, Mother Up Pilot in DC, and People's Prosperity in St. Paul. Like what has been said, pilots serve a purpose, but we are invested at Kresge at looking at systems change that addresses economic, racial, and social inequality and trying to effectuate change in an economic system that, quite frankly, was never really built for success for many people. So for us, universal basic income, guaranteed income pilots were really never meant to be a silver bullet or an answer to economic disparity, but rather part of a larger effort where philanthropy has an opportunity to drive innovation, to support policy, narrative changes, power building, and do things in a more transformational way. We know that a multi-pronged solution is necessary to address the plethora of barriers that have led to economic, racial, and social inequality. Quite frankly, we need all the tools in the toolbox and all the players on the field if we're ever going to change the trajectory of what this economy means for people. We are fortunate to engage with the economist Derek Hamilton. He's a professor at the New School and founding director of the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. I know that many of you may have heard from Dr. Hamilton at the ACF conference last year or are otherwise familiar with him. We are fortunate to say that he is our favorite economist. I know that's a little bit like saying a favorite lawyer or a favorite workout, but I digress. Derek has helped us at Kresge really think about an inclusive economic rights agenda, and we now refer to that as a people-centered economy. This encompasses work of guaranteed income pilots, earned income tax credits, child tax credits, community wealth building, baby bonds, fiscal and tax policy, reparative justice, as well as policy to such public programs such as WIOA and TANF and SNAP. Dr. Hamilton has encouraged us to think about what is the purpose of economy and how can it reflect a moral and just economy for all of its people. It is ironic to me that our country often applauds independence and excellence when so many of our systems are based on the basics, the poverty line, the minimum wage, and it really deprives people of agency. And instead of making best decisions for talents and interest and highest potential, many families are forced to make economic choices out of desperation. And again, that is really not sustainable long term. We've really lived with the idea of poverty way too long. And so pilots like the basic income pilot, again, is a part of what I consider a big puzzle and part of the solution. And I am, again, thankful for the opportunity to share our thoughts. And thank you again to Arlington Community Foundation.
Thank you so much, Gina. Before I elaborate on what Gina mentioned in terms of where we're going locally and at the foundation with policy change, I want to speak to what's next in the lives of our participants. We have had hundreds of conversations with them as their time in the pilot has wound down and in recent months since. And we've learned, not surprisingly, that many of their stresses around meeting basic needs and rent have returned. Anticipating this was why we worked throughout the pilot to ensure that our participants who did express needs remain connected to local services. As Anita said, the Department of Human Services, we at the Community Foundation, and our wonderful community nonprofits affirm that they matter, their needs matter, while we continue to advocate for policy change at the state and federal level. At the same time, we've learned in these conversations that there are other positive effects that the participants describe carrying forward with them still. Things like job certifications and better jobs, a greater awareness of opportunities in the community, and the positive experience of having had even the temporary bandwidth to set and make progress on goals to motivate them going forward. And finally, again, it's important to underscore, in spite of many positive outcomes, and even with housing grant and this extra $500 in monthly cash, the median Arlington's Guaranteed participant still remains severely rent burdened, paying more than 50% of their household income toward rent. This highlights the critical need for further investment in deeply affordable housing and childcare infrastructure in Arlington to address these extreme disparities in our expensive community and to prevent the further displacement of our low-income neighbors. So what's next for policy change? as Gina mentioned, they're scaling up these pilots to permanency through philanthropic dollars alone or local government funds is not sustainable. We can innovate, but we can't sustain. So instead, the data from our pilot and the 143 others across the country builds the case for a federally funded guaranteed income. Arlington County board members have joined the Counties for a Guaranteed Income, calling for state and federal investments to scale up what's been demonstrated to be effective in these pilots. Last year, we joined other funders in the DC region for visits with lawmakers on Capitol Hill to advocate for a national guaranteed income. And we hosted my favorite economist too, Dr. Derek Hamilton, to speak on his vision for a human rights economy, including his proposal to use the US tax code to create an income floor under which no one can fall. And last fall, Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman from New Jersey announced the reintroduction of the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program Act. In the meantime, states are building out their child tax credit and or earned income tax credits to get regular cash with no strings attached to low-income households. As of the end of 2023, 18 states have passed policies that have improved, expanded, or created a child tax credit or earned income tax credit, some with provisions to ensure that these tax credits are distributed periodically throughout the year. The pandemic era federal expanded child tax credit in 2021 was a game changer. It reduced child poverty across the US by 46% in just 6 months before it was allowed to lapse in 2022. This was effectively a nationwide trial of guaranteed income by the federal government. Monthly cash with no strings attached was dispersed by the US Treasury to people in need, while not jeopardizing their eligibility for public benefit. This extra income had zero effect on people's participation in the labor market. Arlington Community Foundation is advocating for Virginia legislators toward a more meaningful child tax credit in the years to come. For those of you who ask, what can you do to support these efforts? We really need your help in changing the narrative around people in poverty. Too many people still think that poverty is a personal failure, and that if you simply work hard enough, you can make it. The response to that is threefold. One, say it again, regular cash with no strings attached provides critical bandwidth to communities that have been long denied access to wealth and assets through punitive benefit systems and racist economic policies. And as Gina said, guaranteed income is important in filling gaps, but does not replace the current social safety net benefit. Second, we must trust people. We must trust that they know best how to prioritize financial decisions for themselves when given extra resources. And third, as important as having increased income and assets are, having a sense of personal control and belonging in one's community are essential to a reasonable standard of living with dignity and for the overall health of our community. To learn more about these issues, go to the Foundation's website and click on Economic Mobility. Watch and share our Earning More But Getting Poorer video, learn about our other pilots, and read some of our policy papers. And reach out to our state elected officials in support of expanded, meaningful child tax credits, and to federal legislators in support of guaranteed income as national policy. And if you are so moved, contribute to our Shared Prosperity Fund to allow Arlington Community Foundation to continue its work around economic inclusivity. A very special thanks again to our donors, our partners, and the participants who shared this journey with us. And on that note, one of our participants will have the last word.
It made me feel like I did have a time as where I can really have a time to just sit and just focus on what I needed to do without stressing. Just sit home and say, okay, plan 1, plan 2, plan 3. Oh, I have a lot of time to myself, you know, so everything was already situated. So I managed all that in one nutshell. Within the 18-month duration, I was 100% on point. I paid off fines, I paid bills, basically bought clothes, things I need. I ate, you know, did the things that I needed, basically I didn't feel honestly stagnated. And plus, you know, of course, I said before, lived off a family. And so basically it made me feel like I was really involved in like a family purpose. I really felt like am I loved? Yes.